Welcome to Startup TV Boston. I'm Michael McCarthy, and I'd like to welcome my two guests. First, Agnes Igaye. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And Vinod Parmeshwar from Oxfam. Welcome.
Thank you, Michael.
This is part of our social entrepreneurship series, and Agnes actually has a social entrepreneurship idea, project that we're going to hear about, and Vinod has been a judge for social entrepreneurship ventures in the Boston area for some time. And what we're going to do today is we're going to hear what Agnes's idea is. We're going to spend a few minutes on that, find out what her challenges are, and then Vinod and I are going to coach her to make sure that her social entrepreneurship venture becomes a greater success than what it already is. Sound like a fun game? And for all of you in TV land, if any of you have a social entrepreneurship venture, you get to take a peek into what it's like to coach and be coached. And all the same concepts are pretty similar for almost any venture. So Agnes, tell us, what is your startup?
Wow, privilege, to be coached today. So I'm building a center, to rehabilitate survivors of human trafficking, and it's due to be completed in June. And right now I'm putting together a plan on how do you rehabilitate, preparing them for the job market. Because when people are trafficked, they deceive them about job opportunities. They are chasing their dreams. So that's why it's called the Dream Revival Center. But you need to prepare them, to get and keep those jobs, because it's tough for them.
So for the people in the studio audience, so they understand, could you define and give us examples of what is human trafficking and what are some examples of different types of human trafficking? And that'll give us a good base that we can start with. So what's human trafficking and what are some examples?
So human trafficking is where, people recruit, women, boys, men, but the majority usually, in my situation back at home, is women. So you're recruited for purposes of exploitation. So you are moved from your home to another. So you're exploited. Exploitation can be sexual exploitation, can be forced labor, can be removal of organs, like, exchange of organs, but also, some people use it, for sacrifice, for if you want to harm your enemies. There's also child marriage, in my own country. So it's a variety, of ways, but the end result is really exploitation.
So the people that are victims of human trafficking, are they kidnapped?
No, not all of them. There was kidnapped, for example, in northern Uganda with the Lord's Resistance Army, where they kidnapped, boys and girls. That can happen, and then they are recruited in that way. But in many cases, it can be just somebody, just the catchword is, do you need a job? And so then you accept, enticed. Yeah, you're enticed, you're lied to, so you're excited about this job opportunity, you actually go along with it. But when you get to that destination, they say, okay, now, it's this kind of job. They want you maybe to get into, prostitution. You say, this is not what I wanted to do. Then they tell you sometimes they're the ones who have paid for your air ticket. Sometimes it is an area where you don't speak the language. They make you fearful of the police. They keep away your passport. So the control mechanism is what keeps you in that situation.
I see.
Yeah.
So they can turn you into prostitution.
Yeah.
They could steal your organs.
Yeah. Forced labor.
They could put you into forced labor, which is effectively slavery.
Yeah.
Okay. And are there other types of human trafficking, or are those the...
Yeah, so every country, because it depends on, when the United Nations, put up the law in 2000, they said at the minimum, they talked about sexual exploitation, they talked about domestic servitude, they talked about forced labor. But when countries are co-opting in making their own laws, they also bring in things which are specific to their countries. For example, in mine, use of children in armed conflict, happened.
And what is your home country?
Yeah, Uganda.
In Uganda.
Because
okay.
here you wouldn't have use of children in armed conflict in the United States. So in my country, that is there. You know, child marriage is there. Using children, you know, for illegal activities like begging, you know, it's there. You know, quarrying, you know, in the agriculture, you know, in domestic servitude. So, so that is specific, you know, to my country. So all that in my country comes up into trafficking.
And your startup is trying to help all these victims of human trafficking.
So yeah, I would love to help all of them, but that's just not, you know, will be so difficult. And even when you're talking about exploitation and what happens to them, you know, they have health needs, they have safety needs.
Safety needs.
Safety needs. They have legal needs. So in my experience, because, you know, when monitoring and coordinating activities of trafficking in Uganda, I run after human traffickers and lock them up. But in my experience, I realized, you know, when you have survivors, people returning, you know, they call me like 11 p.m. or at midnight. When I pick them or rescue them, I take them to my house, and that is dangerous for me and because there are no centers. So I saw a gap in that situation. And then I started, you know, on my own, because, you know, they say you don't wait for government to do everything. When you're passionate about something, you do it anyway. So I started, you know, building this center and all that. Then an opportunity came where I won an international award. And then the international award, they gave me like $50,000.
Well, so before we get too far ahead here, so just so I understand all this, so you were working for the government of Uganda in the immigration area, and that was when you became exposed and aware of victims of human trafficking. And when they were rescued from their plight, now you find that they have all these needs. They have medical issues that need to be taken care of. They need jobs, etc. And so your center, the Dream Revival Center, is your startup trying to help these people fill in the blank.
Yeah, because we want, you know, to get them jobs.
Okay.
Okay, because when you return, you know, you need those skills. You know, come to think of it, all of us need how to write a resume. You know, that confidence, you know, the public speaking. You need that job search. How do you search, you know, on the internet? Where do you look? Because first of all, you know, they're afraid. They even trust issues. So just, you know, to help them, you know, first of all, you know, that, you know, this has happened to me.
And you won $50,000 from the Diane von Furstenberg Foundation to create the Dream Revival Center, which is, it's being built now as we speak?
Yes, as we speak.
Okay, so it's when it's completed, how can we help you? This building is done, you have $50,000, how can we help you? Yeah,
the thing is, you know, first of all, I need that training program. How do you put a package, you know, for women, you know, girls who have returned, you know, to get those life, you know, to get those skills to prepare them for the job market. It's kind of like, you know, maybe some of them maybe have finished school, they're in different stages, you know, of school. You know, some of them it's secondary school, some of them it's low skills. But how do you prepare them? So that training, you know, package. And how do you navigate into that? So that's the help.
So you need a training program, okay?
That's one of the issues.
Is there any story that you can share that shows the potential of what can be done with a center like yours?
In Uganda, I've visited, you know, different centers. But why this one? Because you find that, you know, centers, you know, take care of, you know, health needs. There are centers where there have been, you know, agriculture and all that, you know, to support, you know, to just support, like, you know, living, you know, today. But along the way, I realized that you need something sustainable. So to prepare them, to, you know, to give them those skills on the different areas in which, you know, they'd want to go to. So it becomes like, you know, a bigger, it's kind of like, you teach somebody, you know, how to fish instead of giving them a fish.
Right.
So instead of the food every day and what you don't know how long you're going to stay at the center, it's like, you know, empower you, you know, to be yourself and, you know, to get out there and plan that. So that's like, you know, the gap. So I've not seen that like happening in Uganda, you know, at that scale. I've seen just the short ones, you know, the short, you know, steps people are taking.
What are some of the big challenges you're facing?
Mainly because unemployment is huge in that, and then also getting the money, to do all those things. Because when you have even a person, a challenge also, like as you train them, because they have several other needs, where they have the health needs and what. But there's also opportunities, in there, which I'm excited about, because I was working with, the task force. So if it is health, you refer them, you have health professionals. If it is legal, you have, because, you refer them to law firms and all that. So that can happen concurrently. But the one thing I know, because I can't do everything, is that gap that I want to bridge, because eventually if they start making their own money, they can also do other things.
Excellent. Yes. This is very inspiring. You have to let us know. I can think of a lot of different examples from my own experience, which might be relevant in your case, because I've worked with young girls who got trafficked, and then there were a lot of different issues we were trying in terms of helping them re-assimilate and integrate back into society. And in more cases than not, these girls did not actually want to go back to their birth homes and to meet their parents because of social stigma, because of what they felt they had done, etc. So I was wondering, based on your experience, what have you seen on that side of things in terms of actually enabling them to go back versus trying to help them set up to be on their own?
I'll tell you, I'll just share with you my own life, experience. I remember when we flee, me and my family, I was targeted by the Lord's Resistance Army because, they wanted, virgins and commanders. So I remember when I was running away from my village and ending up, displaced. And when I recall moments like that, I just wish there was somebody to just grab me at that moment. So those are some of the things that want me to get them on their feet, to be able to get that experience.
That is so inspiring. So my one tip to you as a person helping you would be, you should start off with that personal journey, because that is what demonstrates your interest in actually working on it. And that goes a long way in actually convincing a would-be investor that this person is not going to give up on this venture and move on to a different thing. Because one of the things is that entrepreneurs always are coming up with different ideas. What an investor needs to know is, what are you going to do to ensure that this idea gets to a certain level of maturity? And so you're looking for that personal story that will then exemplify your commitment to this issue. So what you just shared is what I would advise you to lead with, instead of it coming later on in a conversation. So when you are meeting prospective donors, supporters, starting off with like, this is my story and this is why I'm working on this issue.
Thank you.
It allows us to have the emotional hook. It gets our buy-in that we want to help you. We see the need very clearly. And when someone is telling a story, the brain remembers pictures, it doesn't remember words. So when you tell me your story, I get images in my head and I'll remember your story. And what I'd also encourage you to think about is the needs that you had. That, for example, you mentioned that people come back from a human trafficking experience where they might actually have some skills at this point. Certainly skills of resilience and survival. And some of those skills, is that something that an employer might have an interest in? And if so, would that be a target of going to, let's say, a certain industry and saying, hey, we get all these people coming from survivors of human trafficking who are uniquely qualified to help in your industry. Would you sponsor training them for what they need, and then they're going to come to work for you? And I'm wondering if there is an industry where there is a group that would inherently be interested in helping these people or benefit from their experience. Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, when you talk about skills, I know that they do because I've met them in the course of my work and interacted with them. So these are people who have been subjected to exploitation. I'll tell you, for example, in sexual exploitation, all of them say, the first time they take you on the street, or sometimes it's a rep, to begin with. So it's kind of, getting used to that situation just to cope, to survive. So the first time it is shame, but afterwards you get to learn how to, to get the customers, because it's important. So those are, interpersonal skills, that people, so some of them may not think that they are smart, but it's like turning that hard into something gainful for them. To just give them the confidence, that okay, that was done, but in a wrong way, but you need that confidence to do something.
So it's like networking.
Yeah, networking, and also like in drug, abuse, they mix all these chemicals. Some of them can go to school and become the best chemists, and because they're already brilliant, they remember the things they did, but they're doing it now, the right way without that stuff. And of course, it goes along with the healing in the process. Yeah, so that's a very great
well, I'm
idea.
thinking when you talk about if you had the prostitution population, I mean, I could see them being waitresses, hostesses, hotel service. Just basically, if you know how to make a quick relationship, like how to just sort of have like 5 minutes of chit chat, that perhaps the hospitality or catering industry, maybe the hotel industry in Uganda would say, okay, these people already have some skills with that. They know how to read body language. They certainly know how, they're not shy, they certainly know how to deal with all kinds of different people coming at them, and they're not going to be freaked out about it.
The other thing is actually trying to set up two things come to mind based on my experience. One is setting up a safeguard mechanism that when you are trying to, so this was a classic example where there were people getting rehabilitated as domestic servants because these were still very young girls, 12, 13. And so they wanted to work as domestic servants somewhere else. So the organization I was working with was actually doing background checks on the families. So you knew that they were in a safe place, and they had a deal with the families that paid them above the market price. So they made more money than they would have going out on their own. And there were rules that you had to let the children study for X amount of hours a day and with weekend classes, etc., so that over a longer period of time they could take on more sophisticated things. So just because they had been out of school for 4, 5, 6 years didn't mean that they were forever going to be a domestic servant. So it was taking care of both an immediate need while setting them up better for the future. So you would see amazing cases of these girls who were still domestic servants but who are now all caught up for their age level at their school and were already aspiring to better things. And what they choose would ultimately be up to them, but it was essentially at least equipping you with some primary level of education or mid-secondary so that you could then be able to get on a more sustainable path. So it's another thing to consider in terms of how are you equipping them with other skill sets. It doesn't have to be a formal school, but having some kind of a curriculum around that.
I like that idea. You could almost take that exact idea and just put it right with what you're doing.
Yeah, and the beauty about it is because, when you're doing, the scouting of these organizations and these hotels, there will be, people who uphold human rights. So they are in a safe environment. And also doing it with them, it's like, they feel like somebody cares, finally, about them. And then you can also know, keeping people accountable for the success of them and keep track of what is happening.
And the organization will benefit the clients because they will get a more stable person. They are less likely to run away and there will be less turnover. So you can actually invest in building their skills. Plus they get to benefit from the publicity that they will derive from actually investing in a good cause. And I can almost bet that most of the people whom they are employing, they would be able to employ at a comparable cost and probably even save some money. So it is a win-win all the way around. The girls or the boys get a safe place where you have regular check-ins from your institution to check in on their health and well-being. The organization benefits because these students or kids will remain longer. And overall, society is better off because they are reintegrating back into society in a more sustainable manner and becoming more productive citizens.
So who are the large, deep pocket companies in Uganda, the multinationals that are there now?
Of course, Uganda just discovered the oil, so there's excitement around oil.
Right,
But,
so we
but we also have
Shell, Chevron, Exxon.
we have Shell, but we also have the hotel industry. you know, the Sheraton Hotel, the Hilton. But the thing is, of course, the hotel also has their, you know, 4-star, whatever star, and what. So it's like working through, you know, those relationships. And the good thing, I was once a Hilton, you know, Hilton and Vital Voice had a partnership. So I was selected among 26 women around the world who are at the forefront of fighting human trafficking. So they brought us here to the United States. So Hilton Hotel invested in it because they are also training their staff and, you know, kicking out trafficking, you know, out of the hotel industry. So they are taking the lead. So hotels like that who are already doing something in it, who want to make a difference, and, you know.
So how about going back to the Hilton, who's already opened up their checkbook for you, and saying, hi, I won $50,000 from the Diane von Furstenberg Foundation. Would you make an internship program or some formal thing? Put the Hilton name on it. Why not put the Diane von Furstenberg name on it? Maybe there's more money from there. And put those two big names together. The benefit they get out of it is they get to say, look at the good that we're doing in the world. And that raises them up. If anyone ever says, oh, these two organizations are exploiting people, oh, no, they're not. Look what they do for human trafficking. So they may be willing to be your mentors and your sponsors. And I would encourage you probably to have that conversation, start with one, get the first customer, and go really deep with them. Really deep and say, listen, you've already helped me. Diane von Furstenberg helped me with this center. What do you advise? How do we get this together? How can I help you help me train these people to come work for Hilton? And then they can go all over the world from there.
And you can leverage that. So that's a very useful piece of advice in terms of going deep, because you can continuously probe, like what are other places where we can bring more people, because there is a lot of people who need help. What are other areas in your industry where you can use the help of people like this so that we can rehabilitate more of them? How can we make this more of a partnership? Which other clients would you recommend? Who are other people in your industry whom you know who would be open to these kind of ideas? And that also gives you credibility within the industry. If you go and talk to a competitor and say, hey, look, we are already working with the Hilton for the past 6 months or a year or 3 years, it's way better than doing a cold call and saying, hey, we want to work with you, and then they ask you, okay, what have you done? So you have to be able to leverage, because of the fact that you already have the recognition in the industry on having been at the forefront of these issues. How do you let your reputation precede you so as to increase the chances of your success and consequently the chances of your enterprise, thereby enabling yourself to make a greater impact on the lives of all these people who are getting trafficked?
Vinod's absolutely right. You need the brand recognition. If you think about it, right now you can say, I'm a student at Harvard Kennedy School. That's a brand, and that works for you. I've won $50,000 from the Diane von Furstenberg Foundation. That works for you. I already have a relationship with Hilton. So once you already have 3 brand names now. So when you dig into those deeper, and let's say you want to go to someone else, the Sheraton, maybe make them jealous because the Hilton's doing it, but the Sheraton's not. The Sheraton's going to ask, who are you doing this with now? When you say the Hilton, they're going to want a piece of it. If you say some small little, this B&B in Boston,
it's also important. It's also important along the way because it will have because there are so many survivors. So even if it is a B&B in Boston, I wish I could uproot it and take it to Uganda, and they can and they have this system where they can train and uphold. That's still great. So
you bring up an interesting point. Let's say you had the opportunity of the B&B or the Hilton. There's a thing called Pareto's principle, or the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your money comes from 20% of your efforts, and it works everywhere. I would not spend time on the small B&B because they can't refer you to other places. They don't have other chains. With Hilton, you get that one customer, then becomes a client, and then you work, once you have them and you've sold them, now you have all the locations. Now all you have to do is, if you make them happy in Boston, you can make them happy in Houston, you can make them happy in Toronto. You don't have to continually sell. If you get one B&B, and maybe they hire what, 2-3 people, that's it. You can't expand and scale with that, and scale is going to be a massive issue with you. You have a lot of people that you need to place. you need a really hungry employer that can take a lot of people. I think the Hilton's actually.
Yeah, and you know, Uganda is also different, you know, from, because when you talk about United States and talking about Hilton, you can find several Hiltons in one state. But in
Yes.
Uganda, you know, it will be one, and sometimes it's like, oh, they are still constructing it. It will come up to this, so you'll have just like a one Hilton, then a one Sheraton, a one. So like maybe a relationship, because they also have, you know, the Association of Hotel industry. So maybe where they also
but the Hilton group would have other properties because they are spread across the scale. So they might have their higher end properties and their middle range properties. You could have a whole scaled, I don't know what I would call a race to the top mechanism, whereby you can create a mechanism whereby you can say, okay, the mid-range Hilton has got 5 people who they have rehabilitated successfully, whereas the top end has the capacity to do 10. Like, what are the other people doing? You could even create a whole competition, a nice one out of it, whereby you encourage more and more people to do more because they want the prestige of being the one that helped rehabilitate the most.
Yeah, the
Yes,
most.
exactly. So in the last 3 minutes of our show, I'd like your help in getting Agnes a little to-do list. Let's say maybe like 1, 2, or 3 things. Where would you, so we know the Hilton, we all love the Hilton idea. Where would she call on the Hilton? Like what department? Who would she call? What country? What advice would you give her on where does she make that first small tiny step, and what does she say?
So I would say make best use of your time here. Try to talk to the corporate social responsibility person or equivalent while you are in the US. Use that contact to then they should be sending an internal letter to their Uganda office. The chances of your getting in is much higher. The likelihood of actually getting a meeting with the right person there, so you don't have to navigate, like you said, which department in Uganda, which would be more difficult. So making a better use of your time here. You could even have one of your professors who is supporting you make the call for you, makes it even better.
Use the brand name. Hi,
So
my professor from Harvard Kennedy School.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like, would you write me a letter of introduction or call up? Try to find out. Use LinkedIn. Who do you know at the Hilton who is already connected to somebody on your network?
You may find that the Harvard Kennedy School has a relationship with the Hilton already.
Yes.
So Harvard Kennedy is a client of the Hilton. The Hilton wants to keep that client happy. So if you go in, again, under the professorship or whoever does the booking at the Hilton, say, hi, we have a student who would like to have a meeting with someone in corporate social responsibility.
And all you need to be ready with is your pitch. You have to be ready. Your ask has to be very clear. You should be like, I have 10 minutes with you. This is my ask. This is what I'm working on. All I need you to do is give me the name of a person who will be willing to meet me in Uganda, who will be willing to talk to me about this. And please let me know if you have any questions, if I need to convince you about why this is worthwhile for Hilton to be associated with.
And what would your ask be?
The ask is pretty simple. It's a win-win situation. Hilton should invest in this because Hilton will benefit from the positive press that Hilton will get out of this. You get to be a responsible and a model exemplary citizen in the hospitality industry. You can lead the charge. You will continue to be known as one of the innovative hotel chains and properties in Uganda.
Aren't you glad we're taping the show?
Yeah. Because I was about like, I should have been writing that, but now you know that's
Well, Agnes, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you
I really
for your coaching
appreciate
help.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
And everyone, thank you for
Vina.
tuning in.
Thank you.
And we will
Thank
see you
you.
next time.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.